Hi, welcome back to this journey where we are creating a complete chat application with a bunch of features. So in the previous video, we had already went in and discussed what is going to be our structure of our UI and how exactly do we plan to go in and create all of the components and elements that are needed to go in and give it a bunch of functionalities, right? So without wasting much of time, we'll just directly jump into the creation of our React application. So I created up a really sample app over here. It's not much. I just used the create React app tool and generated a boilerplate React application where I went in and deleted a bunch of files that you get basically over here, like the app.test.js and the report web vitals. I removed all of that just to go in and keep it bare metal. There isn't much at all. I have my index.js, which is my entry point, and I have my app.js, which is going to be the main container where our app is going to go in and get displayed out. Okay. And I have my app.css, which is empty for the time being because we haven't done anything much onto it. And once we finish this off, right, as we keep building, we'll go in and keep adding more and more styles into this. Another thing that I've also done is I took the courtesy of just adding up a bunch, downloading up this particular icon from Flaticons. Flaticons provide you with a bunch of free icons that you can easily go in and download and integrate onto your web application. So I downloaded this particular icon and another 16 by 16 pixel icon as well, so that I can go in and integrate it to my index.html. Okay, so what you want to do over here is, see, in your link, in your index.html, whichever index.html file that you have, if you want to go in and set a custom icon, it's fairly simple to do. You just need to look for the link tag, which has this attribute called as rel, which is relation. This is the same link tag that we use for adding CSS as well. So in that case, you'll be using relation equal to style sheet. Here, if you want an icon, you're going to say relation equal to icon, and then you can specify the directory where the icon is present. So I have this icon, which I put inside of the public directory, which is live chat 16 pixel by 16 pixel PNG. And I've just added it onto my index.html so that when I open up my web page, it would go in and have this icon in the top toolbar. Okay. And apart from that, I haven't done anything altogether. I have my app.js, and let me just save this up. I've already hosted it so that you can see the output right now. Okay, so there we go. This was our design file, and this is the React app. There you go. So the icon change, as you can see, is it's pretty much there. Okay, because if you're building something complete, let's just do it all the way through. Okay. Now, what I want to do is, let's start with the background first, and then we'll come into the main container. Okay. So this box with the curved edges that you can see, that's going to be my main container. And the background, I'll use my app container for the same. Okay. So let's start with the background. So the background color apparently is this particular hex code. So I'm going to try to follow with the design that I have available over here. And this is exactly what is going to be expected of you as well. When you're working on projects, you're going to be given a design and you need to just go in and replicate it exactly as it is. Okay. So I'm going to go into my code back here again, and I have my app.js. So what I want is, right now it's just going in and printing app. That's all it's doing, sadly. Okay, so we're going to keep making it better. Okay, so just printing app. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go in and try to give it some background color first and foremost. Okay, so for that particular purpose, I've kept this app.css, and to this app, what I can do is, let's just go in and give this a class name, and let's call it as app. Okay, I'm going to call it as app. Save this whole thing up again. Let's not forget to import our style. So if you're using external CSS, please make sure that you're always, importing your styles into your JS files. Okay, so I'm going to just go in and say, okay, you go in and you get me app.css here. Let's just save this. And over here, to my app component, I'm going to say dot app. Okay, so this is the class that we've given to the to this particular div element, and we're calling it as app. And we'll just give it some background color, all right, which is the same color that I have copied from the design file. So I'm going to save this. Okay, let me take you back into the browser, and I'm going to just save this up in every other place. There you go. There you go here as well. Okay. So now one of the things you'd be able to notice is that, okay, so the background color did get applied. Okay, but the scenario here is, as you can see, I want this app component to occupy the entire window. Okay, because whatever is the white space that you can see, I want my app component to occupy the entirety of it. Okay, so the scenario here is that first thing we need to fix is there is some margin available over here, right? So whenever you are creating UIs, make it a habit of being comfortable enough to use the the debug console that you are given access to. Okay, now one thing you can notice is that, okay, so if I'm looking into this body of the HTML document, you can see that it by default has this 8 pixels of margin. Okay, by default this will be there regardless of whatever you do. By default there will be an 8 pixels of margin applied to your website by default. I don't want that. I want my app component, okay, which is this one, this element over here. Okay, I want this particular element to go in and occupy the entirety of the web page or whatever viewport that I have available over here. Okay, so in order to go in and fix that, it's really simple. We are going to be using CSS again, and we will be utilizing a particular selector called as a universal selector. So you just write star, and what this does, it applies this particular style to almost every other HTML element, right? And I'm going to just go in and say margin is equal to 0. So what this will do is, so whatever is the default margin that already had gotten applied is now going to be removed out. So there won't be any left or any margins on the left, right, top or bottom. Okay, so let's just go back into a browser so that we can see the result. I'm going to just quickly give it a save so that you'd be able to go in and notice the change here. Now you can see there is no default margin that has been given. And as you can see, as this particular element, okay, as this within, if you look at my app component, all that is there in it is a div element. That's it. And div elements are by default block level elements. And block level elements by default will be occupying the entire width of its container. Okay, so my app component is gonna go in and occupy the entire width. It is doing that, but I also wanted to occupy the entire height as well. Okay, so the way to achieve this is also fairly simple. We're going to be using this particular, I'm going to use height, but minimum height. Okay, I'm going to say minimum height is equal to 100 VH. I'm using this relative unit called as viewport height. VH stands for viewport height. 1 VH is equal to 1% of the entire height of your viewport. A viewport is nothing but the area that is, that is usable within your window. Like the white area that you were seeing, that's basically the entire window that is usable. So I wanted to go in and occupy whatever is the height of the viewport. Okay, so moving back, let's just check if that did anything altogether. So now you can see that, okay, yeah, so that does it. So now you can see the app component goes in and takes up the entire height. Okay, so if I just hover on top of it, you can see the content is going in and occupying the entirety of my window. So whatever is going to be the window, it's going to occupy 100% of it, like the total height of it. Width, no need of us to specify because it's a block level element. It will occupy the complete width, available width. For height, we had to go in and use the VH or viewport height unit. So I should do so. Okay, so this is fine. Now moving on, we'll start with our main container, right? So let's start with the main container back. So I'm going to go in and create a new folder inside of my source folder. And let's say components. This is how you should be doing this. Make a really good folder structure so that it's not difficult for you to go in and backtrace everything when your project goes in and becomes a bit too complicated. Okay, so I'm going to create a folder over here and I'm going to name this as main container. I'll just call it main container like this. All right, so this is going to be main container.js. So the main container is nothing but the inside box that you see. Okay, so I'm trying to go in and replicate the same design that we have. Okay, so if I just take you back into this design, as you can see, so we have the background with this particular color, and this whitish, almost whitish background that you see is that of my main container, which will host both my sidebar as well as the other set of components, which will be rendered out depending on what the user wants to do, right? So this is the structure that I'm trying to build out over here. Okay, so without wasting much time, let me jump back. And now what we want to do is to give it some style, right? We'll need to go in and give it some styling and everything as and such. So let's create one more file. I'm going to call it as my styles.css. So this is the CSS file which I'll be making all of my React components to go in and use, because we'll be able to reuse some styles at some point of time, which is for sure. Okay, so I'm going to go in and without forgetting, let me just go in and import the style file, the CSS file to this. So mystyles.css, that gets done. And now to go in and render out this main component. Okay, so this is my app component. Okay, I'm going to keep the text there as it is for the time being. Okay, and let's just go in and render out our main container. So VS Code will go in and auto import it for us, as you can see. And now if I just go in and take you back to my browser, you would be able to notice that, okay, so within my app container, my main container is showing up. Okay, so now this main container kind of is going to be present in the center and should kind of go in and occupy some amount of height and width. Okay, so let's see how much height and width it should go in and occupy, right? So the overall, if this is the overall height and width that I have, the resolution is 920 to 1080p because I asked them to go in and make it in this resolution. And then if I look into these boxes over here, the inner main container, okay, this inner box, you can see that it's somewhere around like 1728. Okay, so that means that if the overall width is 1920, okay, the horizontal width of it is 1920. The width of the main container is somewhere around 1728, which is like 90% exactly. Oh, so what I can do here is, if we do some calculation, so 1920 is the total, right? So 10% that will be 192. So 1920 minus 192 would be 1728. Yeah, that's correct. So 90% of the of the viewport, you could say. Okay, so I don't think that would be a problem. Let's just get the color though. Okay, so I need this color. I need this particular color. So which is F4, F5, F8. I'm just going to copy the hex code. All right. The design links are there in the chat section, so you can go in and use this for your reference. Okay, the Figma file link is there in the chat section. All right, there you go. Okay, so now just jumping back into my VS Code, I'll just open this up. Let's jump back into our VS Code. Yes, okay. So I have my main container. Let's just give this a class, and I'm going to call it as main container. I'm going to copy the whole thing, or we can just directly jump in here as well. That's also fine. Okay, so I'm going to say dot main container. I want my main container to have some background color, which we've already copied. So let me just paste it out over here. There you go. So background color is done. And the height and the width that I wanted to go and occupy, right? So I'll just specify the height and the width. So I want 90% of the viewport height and 90% of the viewport width. So VH for viewport height. And for the width, I'm going to say 90% viewport width, VW. Okay. So this seems good. And also the thing was like, we wanted rounded edges, right? So how much exactly? Okay, let's just see the output for the time being. Okay, so I'm going to take you back over here. And as you can see, yes, so my main container is showing up. And as you can see, it just occupies 90% of the, whatever viewport is available. Another thing we also need to go in and take care is like, this has to be in the center, right? This thing has to be in the center. So we'll try to fix that up. We'll try to fix it. Okay, so let me just go back into my VS Code, and over here I have my main container. We can go in and add some kind of content into it later on, but for the time being, this is good enough. Okay, and now let's start with the part where we have to go in and center it. Okay, so we want this main container to be in the center of the app container. Okay, so we have an app element which is a div. Okay, in the center of the app, I need the main container. Now, if you want to go in and center a div inside of another div, there are so many different ways to go in and do this. Okay, one of the ways you can go in and do it is by using the the position absolute and transform. That's one of the ways you can do it. I'll show you in some other component. But now though, I'll say the easiest way I can think of is by just using flex. Okay, so you want a responsive layout. So I'll say flex is the go-to layout strategy if it is a really simple component or element that you're working with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my app.css. Okay, and to this class, or to this div which we given the class as app, I'm going to set its display property to that of flex. And the moment you use display, or whenever you're setting the display mode as flex, you do get access to two of these properties called as justify content and align items. And if I just go in and use both of them and set them to center, you can kind of expect that the content which is present inside of this app container is now supposedly going to be present at the very center. Okay, so that now kind of looks pretty good. Now, even if I change the resolution, you can see that doesn't matter if I go in and change the width or the height, the app container that I have always goes in, and the app container and the main container will go in and resize according to whatever is the height and width, because we are using relative units to go in and build the same. And this will help us immensely, especially when we are going in to create our mobile design. Okay. All right. So this is all in all good. Now I'm just going to remove the text out so that, we can bring in the sidebar component and the additional work area component within this. Okay. So I'll just come back over here. And now what I can do is go to the main container. Let me remove out this text. Okay. Now here comes the important part. Okay. So what we want is within our main container, if you look in the design that we had, that we were trying to go in and use, right? There we go. This one whiteboard. There you go. So you're going to be having a sidebar available within the main container at all times, and there will be a work area. Okay. So let's just quickly go in and get this thing sorted out. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is, let us just go in and create two other components. Okay. So I'm going to create a sidebar.js component. Okay. And alongside of this, I am also going to create another component. Let's call it for the time being as work area, because later on we'll go in and control how this thing is going to be, how much what all is going to be present inside of it. We'll be able to go in and make it in later. But let's just say, let's create one more file here, and I'm going to call it as work area.js. Okay. So I'm going to write RFCE here. I'm going to save this. And for sidebar also, we have it. Okay. Let's just go in and get the styles imported to both of them. Okay. So I'm going to do this here, and I'm going to do this here as well. Okay. There you go. So now within our main container, we can go in and bring in our sidebar. Okay, we brought in our sidebar, and alongside of this, our work area as well. Okay, so we'll get it imported, save this. And now if I take you back to my browser, you'd be able to see that within the main container, you have our sidebar and the work area available. Okay. But now the thing is, we want both of them side by side and in a really good proportion, like a 70-30 proportion. Okay. So how exactly do we do this? Pretty simple. We are again going to use flex as well. Okay. Here also we're going to use flex. There's going to be a lot of flex being used in this project. Okay. Especially in the way that I make it. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is to this sidebar. Okay. Let's just give it a class, and I'm going to give it as sidebar container. Okay, I'm giving names which kind of will tell me specifically what is this class for, right? So make it readable. Okay, and I'm going to say work area container. Okay, so this is also good. Now, the reason I went in and did this is so that I can give some background color for you people to be able to identify both of them. Okay, I'm going to give some background color as red for the time being. Okay, just for the time being. And for the work area, let me give some background color as well. I'm going to give it as blue. There you go. Okay, so that's also pretty good. Now, if I take you back to my browser, as you can see, both the sidebar container and the work area container are present one after another vertically though, but I don't want them vertically. I want them side by side. So the idea to go in and get this working is also fairly simple. What I'm going to do is I have my main container. Okay, the main container has the sidebar container and the work area container, right? So what I can do is I can just change the display down to that of flex, so that because by default the flex direction will be that of row, so they will be going in and occupying positions side by side. Okay, so as you can see, the change it is visible here as in such. So all I had to do was add in one extra line here, which is to change the display mode of the main container to that of flex. Okay, so what this does is it goes in and sets the flex direction as row. So all the elements are going to be now arranged in a horizontal fashion in the main axis. Okay. All right. So this is good, but the problem is they are not occupying the entire width. Okay. I wanted to go in and occupy the entire, whatever is the available width. And right now it's just occupying the amount of width that is required for the content. So in order to go in and specify how much space both of these components can take, I'm going to use a CSS property called as flex grow. Okay, so if the display mode is set as flex, you do get access to flex grow, flex shrink, and flex basis, right? So I'm going to use flex grow here. So let me show you how this can work. So over here in the sidebar container, I'm going to use the shorthand operator, which is just flex. And if you're just specifying one value here, that is all in all good. Now I want them in the ratio of 30-70, right? So I'm going to say 0.3. Okay. And here, let's just go in and set this as 0.7. So the idea here is that I want the 30-70 proportion to be maintained regardless of the width of the container. So because of that, I'm setting this flex grow property. If you're specifying only one property, this is for flex grow. Okay. So I'm saying that, okay, so you can go in and occupy whatever is the amount of width, but as I'm giving the proportion of flex grow as 0.3 and 0.7, the growth of or the amount of space that these two containers are going to go in and occupy will be also in the same ratio. Okay, so if I go in and take you into the browser right now, you can see the thing. This is kind of what we want, right? So I'll just change this to 300. Let's just keep it at 300%. But now see the thing here. Now, regardless of whatever is the width or the height, okay, the two containers are always going to go in and maintain the 30-70 ratio. Okay, and this is kind of what we want. Okay, because the sidebar is going to be remaining there as it is, and the other components are going to go in and occupy the remaining amount of space in the work area. So this is going to be our basic layout that we're going to go in and need altogether. Okay, so one more thing we'll just add quickly into this thing that we made so far is going to be some shadows. Okay, so how exactly do we do that? Fairly simple. But first and foremost, let me just remove all these colors. Okay, I'm going to remove all these colors here. And if you want some reference, I'll just put some border, right? So 5 pixels of solid red. And inside of this, so this is just for our reference for the time being. Okay, we'll be removing this out later on. Okay, 5 pixels of solid blue. Okay, so another thing I would want to do right now, okay, is to give it some padding. Okay, I want, sorry, not padding, I want some curved edges. Okay, so what I can do here is, I have my main container. My main container requires this, right? My main container requires this, this soft edges, right? So I can go in and use this property called as border radius, and let's just set it off as 20 pixels. Okay, I'm not sure exactly how much 20 pixels would be, or whether it is. Okay, we'll just check the design. Let's just go into the design and check it by ourselves. Okay. So this is the design, and if I'm going into this particular component, okay, it's 20 pixels of corner radius. Okay, 20 pixels is pretty good. All right, so if I come in over here, I don't think you'll be able to notice it because of the borders. So I'm just gonna change it. I'm gonna just comment it out from my CSS so that you can see it reflect up over here. Okay, now still though it's barely visible, but the this particular soft edges, as you can see, is there. Okay, you can see the soft edges. Okay, the soft edges are there, and this is kind of what we wanted. Okay, so that the soft edges is also there, and we also do have these two layouts. Okay, we created up our flex layout, which is going to serve as the overall app that we are going to go in and create. So the sidebar, we'll be creating up the sidebar in the next session, and the work area, as we keep building more and more components, we'll be putting them inside of the work area. Okay, so this is the generic app layout for our front end. Okay, so that would be all for this particular video. As you can see, there are a few errors that we're getting in here, but we'll slowly go and rectify them as well. Okay, but for the time being though, this kind of sets up our basic app structure, our UI structure. And as you can see, we are trying to build a much more responsive layout for our application here. Okay, so that would be all for this particular session. In the next session, we're going to go in and start building our sidebar.